Our streams and river here drop gently to their destination, the sea. These waterways were once the ways of wildlife, people, and numerous fish. Any bridges were fallen logs. Low temporary dams were of sticks and mud. Then the English came along and paid for pelts. Newcomers built bridges and higher dams of stone. Paths along banks and floodplains became cartways, and over time, roads for transport and for cattle and hog drives. Finally, dynamite, huge earth-moving equipment and fast cars in ever greater numbers led to straight, wide roads like Route 1 and 114. Wetland and hill topography be damned. Yet some deep urge lingers on. Witness our return in canoes and kayaks, descendants of those ancient craft of log, bark, and skin. Hi, I'm Katie, and I absolutely love kayaking and canoeing and everything river. I'm an officer of the Masconomet Environmental Club, a river warden for Ipswich River Watershed Association, a member of an organization called Climate Cafes, and really just an all-around environmentalist. I would say that my passion for environmentalism stems from my love of nature. I've been hiking for the greater part of my life and grew up playing in rivers. Ever since I was a kid, I've always had dirt in my fingernails and leaves in my hair.
Hi, I'm Marion, and I'm going into my senior year of high school at Masco. I'm passionate about the environment and protecting it so that we can continue to enjoy everything that it has to offer. I personally love going to the beach and going camping with my family, along with a lot of other outdoor adventures. I joined the Masco Environmental Club this past year, and I've enjoyed helping with our events, our new composting system, and now also with Fish Brook.
We've been best friends since we were little, and now we're in the high school environmental club together.
The club has been incredibly successful, and we've recently implemented composting into our school's cafeterias.
We've done movie screenings, river cleanups, nature walks,
fundraisers, drives for animal shelters, and a whole lot more.
So when Joel Hariton of the Ipswich River Watershed Association reached out to us with a river problem, we knew we had to take action.
And so we started our Fish Brook journey.
Kayaking for us is an adventure and peaceful at the same time. It lets us do something active and outside in nature with the added serenity of gliding through the water. As soon as we push off the landing, it's like we enter this whole new world, just us and nature.
It's a really beautiful day to go kayaking.
It really is. It's the perfect weather and everything.
Yeah, we couldn't have asked for a sunnier day. So we're going under this tree. Here it comes. Here it comes. There we go, just kind of maneuvering around this fallen tree. So, there's a lot of things to avoid on this river,
Including Katie's paddle.
The further we paddle, the more wildlife we see. Down to each individual insect, you could spend days just trying to soak up every little detail. But what is more amazing is the way they all just harmoniously interact, building these incredible ecosystems that we are lucky enough to catch glimpses of as we paddle by.
The river is so beautiful, so it's sad to see litter carelessly strewn around, especially since we are the visitors to the natural habitat of birds, insects, fish, and mammals.
The litter is all along the sides of roads and in river landings, and from there it just gets washed into the river.
We've noticed the trash, but we didn't realize the weight of the problem until Joel reached out to us, looking for ideas from high school students on how to protect the river.
Today we were lucky enough to meet with Joel Hariton, who's part of the IRWA. How did you find out about the Masco Environmental Club, and could you tell the story of how the project started?
Sure. I found out about the Masco Environmental Club initially through a friend, Zilly Banju, who is involved in the school board, I believe. And then Rachel Snyder over at the Ipswich River Watershed Association wanted to have me meet with you guys to get some sense of what kind of project can be done. So that's when we had that little meeting at the bake shop in Housefield and started brainstorming. I didn't initially know there was an issue with pollution on Fish Brook until the Ipswich River Watershed Association, which I'm quite involved with, has spring cleanups river-wide, and I, along with my wife Jean Pickering, decided we were going to clean up the Fish Brook tributary on the Washington Street bridge where it goes over Fish Brook. And to our surprise, it was an enormous amount of trash in there. We kept pulling out trash for hours, and we were astonished by how much was there. We thought maybe we were the first ones to clean it up in 10 years. We filled up an enormous bag, probably 30, 40 pounds of plastic. That's a lot of plastic. And so we got it all cleaned up, and the next year at spring cleanup, we decided to do it again, and we thought there might be a few items. And it was almost as bad. And then we started to realize this is a place where people are using it as a dumping place. And to me, that was awful in many ways.
Right away, we wanted to help. We went to go investigate the river landing on Washington Street to see what we were dealing with.
It was absurd, just trash everywhere. On the road, in the water, in the trees, and all around the area. Just trash on trash on trash.
The tributary itself looked sad, just carrying all of this litter out to the Ipswich. So this is the site of Fish Brook. We're doing our first look here. It's on Washington Street in Topsfield.
And even like right away, you can see there's trash along the side of the roads. There's some trash further back in the trees.
Our first time at Fish Brook, we saw so much litter and collected several bags worth of trash, but even that wasn't all of it. We had a couple ideas about how the trash was getting there.
We think that maybe people are throwing things out of the windows of their cars as they're going by.
Things might also blow out of their windows.
Coming to school, maybe they're having their breakfast, snacks or something on the way to school, and when they get to Fish Brook, they just toss the container in there because it was so much. Mostly plastic packaging, and of all types of anything from cans to bottles to drinks, almost all plastic. And we saw a little bit of glass as well, but mostly it was plastic of various sorts. And by the time we pulled it out, might be wrapping, it might be hard plastics, but sometimes it was partially buried already in the silt, maybe because it got silt, buried, washed over it a few times.
Even like this is a plastic cup, or was a plastic cup. It's all broken up into small pieces and buried under the dirt. You can see how much dirt is on top of that. That's been here for a while.
This is the worst right here. Styrofoam, this never breaks down.
I take the world by storm. Let's go.
cigarette butts. We see these all the time, and they're really small, so they're hard to find.
When the plastic is here for a while, it can break it down into really small pieces, and then that can be really hard to pick up from the dirt, and it can break apart even more.
Don't matter if I land or if I fall, I know on my return, at least I know I'll be walking tall.
Here's a plastic bottle. This can be recycled. Joel expressed to us that he learned about Fish Brook from a lecture by Mary Ellen Lepionka, an archaeologist.
He learned from her about the history of the river, all the way back until the Ice Age, and about various artifacts found along its banks.
So right away, we wanted to learn more from Mary Ellen. If Fish Brook was an area with rich Native American history, that's all the more reason to protect and respect it. We contacted Mary Ellen, but unfortunately because of COVID, we weren't able to meet her in person. But she was kind enough to speak to us virtually and share her knowledge about the Native American history.
At the time of English contact, the people who lived on Fish Brook and the Ipswich River were the Pawtucket. For 1,000 years or more before the English, the Pawtucket came from the Merrimack Valley to the North Shore of Massachusetts. They came every spring to fish and to plant corn, squash, and beans. Fish Brook and other tributaries to the Ipswich were canoe routes to Ipswich Bay and to Plum Island Sound and to Essex Bay. The Pawtucket had a mixed economy with fishing, farming, clamming, and trading with other indigenous peoples. They had permanent agricultural villages on the rivers and the coast. The indigenous people who came to Fish Brook before the Pawtucket were hunter-gatherers, seasonal migrants. People have been coming here for a long time. Our area was first occupied by people 15,000 years ago or more during the last ice age. We know about the Fish Brook band of Pawtucket only through accounts of early settlers. Native villages were sited as close as possible to waterways or bodies of water. Water had to be carried by hand for daily use, and most transportation was by canoe. Many village sites are underwater today.
Long before roads and bridges were built, Fish Brook was an essential travel way for the Pawtucket. The banks are rich with Native American history, and the soil is chock full of stories and culture. Just being able to kayak down the same tributary feels special. Yet it is littered with plastic and trash by unaware people who are unknowingly disrespecting this historically and culturally significant area.
Protecting and restoring Fish Brook and possibly posting information about its historical significance would be a good thing. In addition to conserving a special natural environment, you would honor the memory of the many generations of indigenous people who relied on it.
We desperately wanted to restore the land and sustainably keep it in good condition, but the two of us cleaning up trash alone would not be enough to tackle this big problem.
We needed something even bigger. We needed to involve the Masconomet Environmental Club.
Our idea was to send a member out every other week to clean and assess the river's health based on a certain set of criteria. This is called being river wardens. It was around this time when the pandemic hit. Our initial plans for the club were struck down. So instead, we coordinated a virtual river warden training with the IRWA.
Rachel Schneider of the IRWA hosted a Zoom training, complete with a screen-shared PowerPoint presentation, and the whole club tuned in.
So I'm Sarah McVey, and this was my first year on the environmental club, my sophomore year. I should have joined earlier because I'm big on protecting the environment and, helping the world to become a greener and cleaner place. But I'm also going to be an officer for my junior year, so I'm very excited to kind of help lead the club in taking more proactive approaches in our community. And the club as a whole, we all were trained as river wardens, so we learned how to go and clean and properly take care of the site. And we were taught that we needed to make sure that we need to keep the place clean, but also we need to think of humans and how they're going to access the river, but also how animals are going to interact with the environment. So things like trees that have fallen down, we need to make sure that, especially on bigger parts of the Ipswich River, kayakers need to be able to go through them. Obviously, Fish Brook is kind of a smaller area, but animals use those kinds of things to cross the river. But members go out twice a month and we prune back vegetation to make sure that people can access the water. We have a spreadsheet, so we send it out to the whole club and they can sign up for a month, and whether they want to go at the beginning or the end of the month, and then they can go on their own time to clean Fish Brook. So we just all work collectively as a group to keep Fish Brook clean.
When you went to monitor Fish Brook, how would you describe the amount of trash that you found?
So I brought 2 trash bags, and they were big trash bags, and I filled up both of them pretty much. So there was a lot of trash. I found a lot of metal cans and bottle caps. There were also a lot of cigarette butts lying on the side of the road too. So I tried to pick up as much of that as I could, but there were a lot, unfortunately. So I just kind of went into the woods and tried to pick up as much as I could. There were also some things in the water that I couldn't access, like a metal can and a 5-gallon water jug. So the Ipswich Watershed Association, we needed assistance for them to go in. So it was kind of annoying to see that people were somehow getting stuff there, or garbage trucks were allowing stuff to blow off into the water like that. As a club, we're trying to increase awareness and just hoping to make people cognizant of what their actions are doing to the environment. I think we just want to kind of do our part in keeping our local area clean, because nobody wants to go around and see trash. So I think we just want to try and make people aware of what they're doing. So I've seen a lot of videos about pollution around the world, and I know, the impacts of what it does on the wildlife and how it can decrease, the quality of air and that kind of thing. So just trying to keep any possible area locally clean is really important to me, especially since we have a lot of wildlife both on land and in the water. Just think about what you're doing. When you throw that plastic water bottle out the window, where is it going to end up? If you're throwing it into a river, it's going to move. It could cause blockage. Just think of the impact of what your simple action is doing and how easily you can prevent it by just either recycling it or putting it in the trash, and how much better you can make the environment.
Environmental club members signed up individually or in teams for different sections of each month to go to Fish Brook and clean up any litter in and around the site, assess blowdowns, prune back obstructing vegetation, and fill out the river report based on a set of criteria that they learned about during the virtual training. The river report was formatted into a Google form, and members report on the status of the river, the status of the landing, and any help they may need from the Ipswich River Watershed Association in removing blowdowns or major dumpings.
Everywhere you go, there's a piece of trash. There's some in the water where the animals live, so we need to pick it up.
Can you find this hidden piece of trash? Sometimes it takes a keen eye. So what really are the long-term implications of plastic? Why is it so important that we don't just let it pile up? What would happen if we let it sit there forever?
We took all of these questions and more to Nathan Gray,
who is working on making sustainable building blocks, or eco-bricks, out of soft plastics and disposable water bottles. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to plastic.
We had actually met him for the first time this past fall at a river cleanup, and that's when he first introduced us to the Eco-Brick project.
I'm Nathan Gray. I'm a founder of House Factory Foundation. I'm also the project lead of Eco-Bricks. And what I see is there's mostly plastic. It's mostly plastic out there. One of the most common things that I see are soft plastic bags, fireball nips, and other alcohol nips. I think the more litter that's out there, the more people are kind of willing to throw their trash on the ground as well. If they see other people doing it, they think that it's okay for them to do it. So yeah, just something that needs to be educated more. So we need to educate people more on it's not just about getting rid of that piece of trash, but what it actually does and how long it stays there, what it goes through.
Nathan explained to us that litter in the streets washes into rivers and ultimately into the ocean from runoff. So we decided to get a better look of our watershed and see where the litter is really going.
Fish Brook is a tributary to the Ipswich River, which means that its water, along with any litter in the water, flows into the larger river. It continues through Essex County and finally empties its contents into the Atlantic in Ipswich.
This is where Fish Brook and the Ipswich River meet the ocean. All of the water from our local watersheds ultimately ends up here.
And all of our litter floods out into the ocean for marine life to eat or be exposed to. What kinds of animals might eat plastic litter?
Yeah, the turtles are a big one that we're finding a lot of. That turtles are eating plastics or getting stuck inside plastics. The more it breaks down, the wider range of animals that can eat it. One of the big ones, there's a lot of case studies on it now, is the fish in the ocean and fish in streams and lakes that we're consuming are consuming these plastics. So if they're consuming the plastics, then we are. It's quite a scary thing.
Yeah. But what's even more scary is that the path of plastic is not as simple and predictable as litter flowing out to sea.
Plastics break down into microplastics, and these are spread across the world. They can get wrapped up into the precipitation cycles in the soil, in our bodies.
The original form of plastics, for instance, a water bottle can sit in a trash heap for 100 years. And if it's a tarp, for instance, that sits in the sun, it could break down for 3 to 5 years. We all have tarps in our yards that start to break down a little bit over time. So the environmental exposure compared to with the sun and the heat and different things are definitely that. But it's inevitable that the microplastics stay in our system and in the ground for hundreds of years. Yeah, microplastics is the breakdown of the original plastic into very small particles, and the particles keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller and never really going away. Once you learn how to look for microplastics, you can start to find them everywhere. It's like a new car that you buy, and you see it everywhere on the street when you first get that car. They're formed by plastic weed block or tarps that I discussed earlier, or even your kids' toys that get left outside over the winter. It all leaves its impact on the ground and just stays for a very long time. But adding a different chemical makeup to the existing environment is changing things. It's like adding a new predator to the area. It's going to have an effect that we might not see right away, but it will have a long-term effect.
And the longer it sits there, the more it's on its way to break down into microplastics, which can get caught up into precipitation cycles. Microplastics can attach to water vapors, which rise into the clouds with evaporation and can come down anywhere in the world in rain or snow. They're in the air we breathe. They're in the soil our food is grown from. They're in Arctic snow, decreasing surface albedo and increasing the rate of ice melt. These chemicals can be hormone disruptors, BPAs, PCBs. The litter problem is so much bigger than Fish Brook. A piece of litter can have global effects. So how can we actually tell how much pollution is in the river? We talked to Ryan O'Donnell of the Ipswich River Watershed Association about natural ecological signals.
The types and numbers of macroinvertebrates tell you a lot about water quality because different groups require different degrees of water quality to thrive. I mentioned mayflies and stoneflies as an example of type groups that need really clean water, while others can thrive in just about any conditions. So leeches, mosquito larvae. If you find mayflies and things, you know, things are good. If you just find flies and leeches, you know, things probably aren't so good. There might be some problems.
We couldn't wait to try out macroinvertebrate sampling for ourselves, so we drove to a wooded location on Fish Brook to see what we could find. Okay, so I brought a strainer so we can scrape it along the bottom and it can pull the macroinvertebrates out to look at them.
This tool could also be helpful. It has a little bit of bigger holes, but that could also get stuff off the bottom.
Yeah, we could also pull them out with tweezers and look at them in these bins or in these dishes. Here's the field guide that Pike gave us. It kind of goes through the equipment needed, the collection procedures, handling. I think we can find some chart of what mayflies look like. We're definitely looking for mayflies.
If there's no beacon tonight to guide me, I'll finally break the shackles of direction and let the headlight.
Oh, I have something. All right. There we go. You can see it moving right there. That looks like a macroinvertebrate. I'll pull it out so we can try to identify it. All right, let's see what this is. So we've identified this as a sow bug. It is moderately tolerant to pollution, so that would mean that the river is in a moderate condition. But this is only the first one that we found, so we can't draw any conclusions yet.
We'll keep looking.
We identify the macroinvertebrates we find based on this chart. Those in group 1 are very sensitive to pollution, so their existence shows that the river is in very good health. Those in group 2 are moderately sensitive, and those in group 3 can survive in pretty much any river conditions.
So we're now looking in a rippled place which has more oxygen, so we'll see what we find here.
Oh, here we go. Yep, we got something. All right.
It looks
There it
similar
is.
to the last
It's
one.
crawling right
Might be
there.
the same thing.
I think it looks, oh yeah. Let's see, this is our second bug that we have found. It's definitely a little smaller than the first. All right.
So we identified the second one as a dragonfly nymph. It's right there.
It can live in a wide range of water quality conditions, similar to the first one that we found. So we're starting to think that this river might be a moderate health.
Frog. Where? Right here. Let's see if I can grab him. See it? No. Oh, I see it. Oh, it's a big one.
It is a big frog. That's not a macroinvertebrate. That's a frog over.
Oh, where did it go? It just jumped away.
That is a big frog. Wow.
It's probably about the size of my hand or even a little bigger with its legs stretched out for sure.
Oh, here's a worm.
Oh, nice. Okay. In the middle.
Oh, yes.
So right in the middle here, you can see the worm.
An aquatic worm can survive in a very wide range of river conditions, and it is very tolerant of pollution.
Oh, that's a big worm. Oh, it has legs. It has legs. It's not a worm.
Oh,
that's a good find.
Wow. Okay. You're just going to be able to see how big this is when we put it in comparison to these other bugs in here. I wonder if it's going to scare all the other bugs, because it's so much bigger. Oh, look, it's just crawling right in.
All of the macroinvertebrates that we found were in group 2 and 3, which means that this part of the river is most likely in moderate pollution conditions.
So the riffle areas that we sampled, which is where the water is running over the rocks and providing aeration, are the first to dry up in a drought.
Even this area might be better than the Fish Brook area near Masco because it's a forested area. It was really interesting to be able to look at the pollution problem through an ecological standpoint.
It just goes to show how we humans can make really big impacts on the river ecosystem as a whole. So we both actually learned about another ecological problem of the river through kind of an embarrassing accident. When a club member was out cleaning up Fish Brook, she saw some trash floating out in the marshy area.
It was definitely not accessible for us to reach, so she contacted the IRWA to help us get it out. There's an email chain back and forth talking about hip boots and attaching a safety rope to the person who would walk out into the water to retrieve the trash.
I was so excited to go film the expedition. It was going to be a big effort. But when I arrived on the scheduled date, I noticed that the water level had gone way down. Like, it was just some mud. Dan from the IRWA came in boots, and he just walked out on the mud to retrieve the trash with me watching. It was kind of embarrassing, but we didn't know that the water level was going to fall. But while I was out there with him, he did tell me about buckthorn, an invasive species growing by the river.
It was an awkward moment, but we did learn about buckthorn, and that propelled us to learn more about the problem and pushed us further down our Fish Brook journey.
It crowds out the native species. It grows very, very well. This is all buckthorn here. This guy with the bittersweet growing up it. Bittersweet's kind of a tough thing to get rid of too, but this is a buckthorn here. This tree is probably only like 4 years old. They grow incredibly fast. And then when you cut them, they grow back even faster. It's really horrifying. So at Riverbend, the Ipswich River watershed headquarters, they've been tearing them out. And I can cut them all, and we can come back in 2 months, and there'll be 6 or 7 more trees growing in the same spot.
Oh, wow.
Buckthorn outcompetes native plants that are necessary for a healthy and functioning ecosystem. It is not nutritious to animals, and it can easily take over and dominate an ecosystem.
Cutting buckthorn will only lead to faster growth, as we learned from Dan. But ripping large plants out of the soil can cause erosion, which is especially dangerous for riverside areas. So we determined that the best method of control would be to pull small saplings before they grow into large plants. But before we went out into the field, we decided to consult Pike Messenger of the Middleton Stream Team, who used to be a biology teacher and is very knowledgeable about invasives and the local ecology. So how effective do you think just pulling small saplings will be at controlling the population?
It'll help, and if you keep doing it for 2 or 3 years, if you've got a small area you want to control, you could do it. What a lot of people do, and we don't like to do it, is they'll cut it off and then paint it with powerful Roundup, which of course we can't do anything like that near the water. We don't like to do it anywhere. But like you say, if you cut one, you'll get 12. But this is buckthorn. And again, enormously prolific. You can see it's starting its fruit now. And if we were to come back here in a month or so, these would be turning red and shiny black. By the way, they're strongly cathartic. If you were to eat one, it's a laxative. And the birds will eat the fruit, the black shiny fruit. But by the way, it produces fruit right up into October. Massive amounts.
We gathered some volunteers and went to work.
So today we're going to pick some buckthorn saplings. This is what an adult plant looks like. It has berries on it, but the saplings are not going to have berries yet. So we're just going to be looking for this white marking pattern on the bark in the shape of the leaves. So we cut pieces of the buckthorn off so that you can use this as a reference. And when you're looking at the saplings, look for this kind of leaf and find those in the white speckles on the bark. What the baby ones look like. These are just very small saplings that would grow into something giant like this, so it's good that we get them before they grow that big.
It was great to get together some volunteers to pick the saplings. We came out with a whole pile of them, and we look forward to going back out to keep our efforts sustainable.
There were some battle wounds though. Carly and I both got poison ivy from being in the bushes, but hey, it's for the river. But that's how far we'll go for Fish Brook.
After picking up trash, developing a sustainable way for the club to continue our efforts, learning about the rich Native American history, sampling macroinvertebrates, pulling invasives, and finding out more and more about the area's ecology, we decided to kayak back to where our whole project started.
We have to thank Joel Hariton for introducing us to the Fish Brook site. And we have to thank the river herself, because all of our efforts can be traced back to our love of the river. Because at our cores, we really are just two nature lovers who want to keep our rivers healthy. So we've gathered a small community here today to talk about the steps everyone can take for the environment.
What can we do about the river ecosystem?
The first step is respect. Respect the ecology, the history, and just be mindful and present in observing it. We actually have to dive inwards and understand our relationship with the natural world. Get out in a kayak or a canoe. If you don't have one, you can rent one or borrow one. Go for a hike. Immerse yourself in nature. If we can spread this respect and understanding to as many people as possible, we can decrease the careless littering. You can also donate to the IRWA, the nonprofit always working to protect the river. Or you can check out volunteer opportunities on their website.
What about the microplastic problem? Is that out of our hands?
Of course not. Some things that everyone can do is go out and pick up litter. But even trash that is thrown away properly can still be harmful. So we need to decrease our consumption. Try reusable bags and water bottles. Even buy large snack bags instead of individually packaged ones. And we can be mindful of the waste we do create. Marion and I both make eco bricks from our soft plastics.
These are some eco bricks that we've made. I'll pass one around. Soft plastics like these can be cleaned and dried and then stuffed into disposable water bottles to make eco bricks that can be used
to build houses. Can everyone just close their eyes and take a minute to imagine? Imagine if everyone recycled hard plastics, papers, metals, and glass, eco-bricked soft plastics, and composted food waste. There would be very little trash remaining. Is this what the future looks like? Can we work together and actively advance our present? Just one step at a time, together we can all tackle these big problems.
What up, world? It's your boy, just one of the guys down here. Well, I could be more specific. I'm a human. And just wanted to, you know, for the sake of all of us Earthlings out there, just wanted to say, we love the Earth, it is our planet. We love the Earth, it is our home. We love the Earth, it is our planet. We love the Earth, it is our home. We love the Earth. We are the vultures, feet on the dead. We're just some rhinos, funny as heck. I'm just a giraffe, what's with this neck?
Hippity hop, I'm a kangaroo. How about that, up and down with you? I'm an elephant, I got junk in my trunk. Come on,
I'm a squirrel looking for my next nut.
And I'm a pony, just a freak horse.
We